Welcome to 365 Brothers, the podcast. Have you wondered who are the Black men that you pass on the street every day? What are their lives like? Well, in this podcast, we have an in-depth conversation with Black men from all across America and all walks of life. Listen to their stories, their experiences, their wisdom. I'm your host, Robin Shine. Get comfy. Today, we are talking to a Black trade unionist and activist. He is part of the Union of Postal Workers, and he's also president of the Baltimore chapter of the Coalition of Black Trade Unionists, and he is a native son of Baltimore. Today, we are speaking with Courtney Jenkins. Welcome, Courtney.
Thank you for having me, Ms. Shine. Hello to all the listeners and viewers.
So before I jump into the questions, I just want to ask you, is there anything that you'd like to share about yourself, your family, where you're from, anything like that before we dive in?
Oh yeah, I mean, I'm just like probably everyone else listening in and watching. I'm a working class person. I'm a shift worker. I'm a postal worker. I take pride in that work, and a lot of that defines what I do outside of work. So the activism representing, working class people like myself in Baltimore City that are postal workers. But I found a lot of who I am through work.
Can you say a little bit more about that?
Well, when I got the job at the Postal Service, before then I was just, doing general labor work, no labor union representation, making minimum wage. And then it was actually my stepmother who was working at the Postal Service. She came to me with a 10-page application. This is before you do everything online, but it was a 10-page application and it asked you everything. And it was for the Postal Service, how many addresses you lived at, every address you lived at. And I was like, I was 19, 20 at the time. I was like, I don't know all this stuff. And I kind of just threw it to the side. But then, they kept pushing me, my parents that was, and I finally submitted the application and became a casual worker, which was a temporary position. And that was in the summer of 2007 or 2008. It was so long ago. And postal years are like dog years. But, I got the job and I got a career position at the age of 20. And it was funny how it happened. My seniority date with the Postal Service is 5 days before my birthday. So, I started at 20 years old having this great government job, as our folks say, right? Benefits, good salary. And a lot of my peers didn't have the same, especially growing up in Baltimore. So that's why I found a lot of what I love to do, my passion, I guess my calling. My fiance says, you found your calling at the Postal Service. So, just going on the work floor and starting to see the only difference between myself and my friends who didn't have these opportunities was this unionized workforce that was the Postal Service. I was making, a living wage. Again, I had health benefits and, I could travel out the country. I had vacation time. And these were things that happened due to me having employment with the Postal Service. So, I say a lot of that. So I got connected with the labor movement and my local union, and they asked me to step up and be a shop steward. I did that. They kept pushing me. The first time I ever got on an airplane and leave home from my parents was actually because of my labor union. They saw me as a young trade unionist and they said, we want to send you to our convention. It was in Detroit at the time. This was 2010, so 10 years ago. August 2010 was, I guess, the anniversary of all this.
Okay.
When I began my journey, and I flew on a plane my first time. I was so excited. Got to Detroit, Motor City, got to be around again other like-minded folks who were fighting for the same thing I was fighting for. But to them, I was kind of like an anomaly. I was young, I was Black, and I was a trade unionist. Most of my peers at the Postal Service don't look like me, aren't in my age group or in my demographic. So through that opportunity that my local union gave me, because they really pushed me, I dedicated myself. But I was sitting in the hotel lobby waiting for the airplane back home to Baltimore, and I had dedicated myself to the labor movement because I was like, wow, if it gave me these opportunities, these first, with no education other than a high school diploma, how many other organizations in the country are going to pluck a young Black male from a city like Baltimore and say, hey, we want to support you. We want to put resources behind you to see you grow, because we know it'll benefit the workforce. So again, just seeing things like that, that's why I say work has defined a lot of my 20s and going into my 30s now.
I absolutely love the passion in your voice. It's so clear you're passionate about it, and that the source of that passion is wanting other people to have the same benefits that you're experiencing. As a teacher, I'm part of a union. I do get there are some times where there are certain policies in the union that I may not always agree with, right? But what I am clear about is that the ability to speak up is benefited when there's such a thing as union representation. Benefits go up, and it really was the primary access to a middle class life in the 50s and 60s. And a lot of people have forgotten that that was a big source of when people who want to make it great again, union work was a part of that growth of the middle class. And now it's on the decline. So again, I really not only love what you do, but appreciate, like I said, the passion, and that you're in your 20s still.
Well, no, I'm 32. I have a deep connection with the members that I represent. I think at the beginning of the pandemic, one of my mentors said, I figured it out. You're an empath. You feel what the people feel, because I get riled up. Something happens in the workplace, I'll get riled up. But I have conversations a lot with younger members that are in their early 20s, where I was 10 years ago, knowing the mistakes, the advantages I didn't take because I had these things, in the palm of my hand. So I'll be talking to them. Some of them are single moms, some of them are young brothers trying to figure out their next step. And I'll tell them, I'm not that far from you as far as age goes, but take this opportunity and do something with it. You may not retire from the post office, but this is a great stepping stool. And again, that's part of why I am so passionate about it, is because I know those same opportunities and those same mistakes that I made. And again, I had my local union to kind of fall back on. I just want that to be there for that next generation of young Black workers, whether they be male or female, from any walk of life. Because again, it literally, in a sense, saved my life.
Yeah, I can hear that. And I can hear that that's a source of the enthusiasm and the passion. That's great. By the way, I love your shirt. Courtney is wearing a shirt that says legalize melanin. Okay. When this is over, I'm gonna ask you where you got it, because I need that shirt. That shirt is awesome.
Oh yeah, my fiance actually created the concept. So, we were stuck in the house. We saw everything happen with the George Floyd in Minneapolis and everything since then. And we couldn't do much because health risk, and I'm an essential worker. So I try to keep my bubble tight. But she created this concept, and she's been donating proceeds to different racial justice organizations.
I am going to put a link to that on my site. I'm definitely going to not only put it on my site, but also get one for myself and take a picture with it and hashtag y'all or at y'all, whatever.
Thank you so much. Oh, we would appreciate that. I appreciate that.
Oh, it is, I just love it. Anyway, so to the interview, here we go. So Courtney, what's your favorite song and why?
So I don't have a particular song. There's so many songs. I have particular eras of music that I like. So, I love 70s soul music. And that transition to the 80s. I love Michael Jackson's, both his first two albums. And my dad had this old record player. He used to play like the Bee Gees on and those type of like soul music, like good, make you feel good. You hear it on Saturday morning, it's time to clean up type of music. But I love the Thriller and the Off the Wall album. I love Working Day and Night. I'm a night shift worker, so sometimes I'll blast that on the way to work because it's like no matter what time of day it is, I'm working day and night. I love New Jack Swing, that late 80s, early 90s, Teddy Riley. I would say now, Jay-Z. I've been a Jay-Z fan, since I can remember, but the Black album, which came out when he retired, I had rarely seen or heard a Black man kind of say, I'm the best to everyone, you know what I mean? And here's my gift to you, my artistic gift to you, this braggadocious, but also very like clean cut sound. There was a song on there called Encore. And it was basically, it's Jay-Z saying, can I get an encore? Like, I know you all love me, but I'm still in a position, even at the apex, where I'm asking you all, can I get an encore? Instead of you offering that up to me.
Yeah.
I mean, so no specific songs. I mean, War, going back to, old school War.
Okay, look, see, I can do this because I want to. So I'm going to ask you, Courtney, you got to give me one. Give me one.
I would say my favorite song is War, Don't Let Nobody Get You Down. It's just a powerful song. Even no matter what type of mood you're in, what space you are in life, what place you are in life, everyone can relate to that. You're walking down the street, especially now in 2020. It just comes in strong. And, it's just don't let nobody get you down. It's the first lyrics of the song. That's one of my favorite songs.
What's a favorite childhood memory and why?
My favorite childhood memory is my earliest memory, actually. Maybe 3 or 4. My grandfather, who passed away in 92, his name was Leroy. And he would, in Saturday afternoons, he would sit me on his lap in his, leather lounge chair with the leather ottoman. I know like a lot of Black households had that same leather chair and leather ottoman. But I would jump from the chair to the ottoman and he would just read me books. Sesame Street, Elmo book is what I vividly remember. And the sunlight was coming in, he had the chair situated where the back was to the balcony, window. So that natural light would come in. And on Saturday afternoons, he would just read to me. That was probably my favorite childhood memory and my earliest memory.
Wow. And it sounds like it was a time of bonding.
Yes. I mean, I only knew him for a few years. He passed away of cancer in 92. But today, what's very interesting and humbling is that a lot of my family members who knew him, who were my age when he was around, they say, you are your grandfather. Your mannerisms, how you conduct yourself. I mean, he even started at the postal service, when one of his first jobs. So they were like, you remind me so much of Leroy. And again, not knowing him or not knowing him well, just having those type of memories, it is humbling to hear because they say he was a great man. And I'm just like, wow, I'm hoping I'm living up to his legacy.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you for sharing Leroy with us.
Thank you.
So I asked this next question in 2 parts. It's about accomplishments. The first part is for you to share an accomplishment that means the most to you personally, and then to share an accomplishment that is the one where others are like, oh, okay. So what's the one that means the most to you personally?
The personal accomplishment that means the most to me is actually getting engaged. My fiance and I, we've been together since the end of high school, on and off. It was a challenge sometimes. She went away to school. I started working at the Postal Service. So, we were young, early 20s, trying to figure out how to do a long distance, which didn't work. And, I don't know, it was almost 7 to 8 years ago. She came home. She was doing graduate school, and she came home for a winter break, and we just reconnected. And I started making the effort to get on the train and go down to North Carolina where she was going to school, and then ended up getting a job. And she, I just convinced her, I was like, you need to come back home, right? And that's one thing I've stressed to my friends who went away to school is like, Baltimore needs you to come back, right? So I convinced her to come back. We packed all of her stuff up in this U-Haul trailer, hitched it to the back of her car, and we drove from North Carolina back to Baltimore. And our relationship was able to grow, was able to flourish. So I finally proposed, as she likes to remind me, in front of our family last Christmas. But so that's a big personal accomplishment to me, just because I understand what partnership means. I understand what love really means, and we've been through a lot. So just getting there, her sticking with me. I'm kind of like a cautious, slow moving person. So just her sticking with me, but us, being able to, all of the distractions that are out there for young Black people, us being able to stick through it and, come together and really, join together as one in this union that we're excited for. We're a year out from the wedding.
So how many years have you guys been together?
Oh, on and off since 2006. But
what?
Solidly since 2007 years. So about since 2013, we really, we became adults, really, and You know, we really gave it a serious effort. So yeah.
Okay, so hold on a minute. So the first time you started dating, how old were you?
We were like 18, 19, and it was like a summer thing. We knew she was going away to college. I was staying back in Baltimore. And, you know, over the years when she was in school, we would give it a try again sometimes, just because we knew we just had this connection, you know, and it's not like just, oh, we could talk on the phone for hours. We could talk about substantive stuff, you know what I mean, in our early 20s, and I couldn't find anybody else like that. So again, she was going to graduate school, and she asked me, she's like, what do you think? And I wanted to tell her, come back home, you know, forget more school, right? But I said, no, go and do this, you know, and finally, again, we reconnected. I was getting on the Amtrak almost every month, taking an 8-hour train ride to North Carolina. And, you know, we would just hang out and, again, get to know each other more until it was like, either I'm coming to North Carolina or you're coming back to Baltimore. And, you know, being young Black, North Carolina isn't necessarily the place you always want to be. And, you know, no offense to any of my North Carolinians, but, you know, she came back home and we've been together since.
I love that. Can I ask, what is her graduate degree in?
She has a MBA in business.
You know, that is not a common story, to have the woman leave town, not just go to college, but to go away and then maintain that connection and have that 14 years later result in a, you know, now you guys are married and going to have a union. So kudos to you on that, you know, perseverance and certainty. And I get you slow moving. My guy is a slow moving guy too.
You know what I mean? Like all the time. And I'm just like, I'm just a cautious person. I'm slow with most things in that sense. You know, I got to be sure. You know, it's a sure thing. And I knew it was, but I wanted to make sure I was also in a position where I could give her everything she deserved.
Now, that was the accomplishment that means the most to you. What is the one that you hear others go, oh?
So the one that I think, the accomplishment I think people really kind of are taken aback by. So last year, around this time last year, I'd actually run in my national union's election. And it was, again, a nationwide campaign. I was 31 at the time. And it was this insurmountable thing that I couldn't do. I threw myself out there. I became a public figure in a sense. I was vulnerable. Who does this young Black man think he is to run as a legislative director to represent 200,000 postal workers? The audacity of him. You know, it was, but again, I got 10,000 votes. I came in second out of 3 people to an incumbent who has been with the union as long as I've been alive. It was one of those experiences where, and accomplishments where, even though I didn't win, the impact that my fiance and myself made, because it was a team effort, the impact that we made on the American Postal Workers Union, it will not be forgotten. And I say that with humility. I'm still reminded of it today. I made great connections with postal workers all across the country. Postal workers who don't even look like me, maybe on the opposite political side of things, but I was talking to those folks, and they respected me. Once they heard from me, they were like, you know what? We were skeptical about giving you a chance, but we talked to you. And that's all it took was me having a conversation. I would fly. I work overnight, and I'm still active in the Postal Service, so I have a full-time job at the Postal Service, but I had to campaign in my free time. So it would literally be me getting off of a shift. I worked next to the airport, which was convenient for this purpose, running to BWI, getting on a plane, maybe going to San Antonio or Atlanta for a night or two, coming back and going right back to the work floor. And it impressed people. Even to this day, they still kind of come up to me and, you're the heir apparent. That's kind of what they say sometimes. And again, I say that with all humility. But it was an accomplishment because no one besides the folks around me really thought I could pull it off. No one at the beginning, Miss Shine, they didn't take me seriously. I will say that.
Yeah.
You know, young guy, he doesn't have much money. But I will tell you this. I'm all about community, and it takes a village. So when I announced I was running, my parents started contributing. My fiance's parents started writing checks. The members from the work floor started cash apping me. I was like, you know, I can't afford, these incumbents make 6 figures a year. You know what I mean? They can afford to just drop everything and fly if I had to put in my own vacation time or miss money from work, you know, use my own funds, pay for the plane ticket, the hotel room, whatnot. And so again, like that community came around, they coalesced around me. And again, I think that's what made folks start taking me seriously. They were like, oh, okay, well, this young man, he has some support. We even did a phone bank for my campaign. I had my union sisters come to my parents' house and they all got on their phones and called all the members they knew. And we were promoting that stuff. We were putting it on social media. And that gave a lot of folks who initially tried to come for us, it gave them a reason to pause and say, you know, I don't dislike what he's doing, but also we can't pick on this young man. We thought we could play up the narrative. He's young, he's black, all that stuff, right?
Yeah.
And it didn't really work. Again, I didn't win, but to get 10,000 votes, my first national union election, coming in second place, it was an accomplishment. Again, in my eyes, and a lot of the members I represent, even to this day, my campaign flyers are still up in some of the facilities, and you know, they're like, "When you going to run again? Are you going to run again? What's your next move?"
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that's awesome. And I do get, we could look and value, did you win or not, right? Like we could measure it that way, but I like how you measure it, which is, did I make a difference or not? Because now there are people of all stripes and of all ages who now see what's possible, the opportunity of being a leader and not having to feel like, well, you know, this guy's been here a while, so I got to wait till he's retired or gone. So kudos. Yeah.
Thank you. And what was interesting about that experience is, folks, you know, I was a young trade unionist. I was, you know, making a name for myself, I guess, in my union career. And the, you know, leadership all around was like, you know, you're going to be the national president one day. And, you know, because my dad's always, every time I do something, my dad will call me and be like, remain humble. So whenever they would say things like that, I would be like, thank you, of course. But also I said, I'm only going to run if the membership calls on me to run. And what literally happened was there was a team that coalesced of officers running in the election. They called me and they said, you know, we want you to be a part of this. And that was the only reason I consulted with my fiance, my dad, my stepmom, my mom, my entire family. And they actually prayed on it. And, you know, we came to the decision. And again, part of the reason why I did run was to show young trade unionists, specifically young Black trade unionists, that, you know, you don't have to know everything. You don't have to have worked here for 30, 40 years. You know, some of us are qualified and ready for the responsibility, but also the labor movement, we have to keep our bench ready. Because, you know, once these leaders kind of retire and go away and do other things in life, who is the next up that's ready to protect our livelihoods in a literal sense?
I get that. Well, may you inspire hordes. So let's look at words. Courtney, what's your favorite quote, saying, metaphor, or book?
I think my favorite quote would be from Gil Scott-Heron, and I believe it goes, not everyone can do everything, but everyone can do something along those lines. You know, and forgive me for not remembering verbatim, but
yeah, that's fine.
The concept around it, again, I grasp that community is important to me. Community has kept me alive, got me to 32, but also, again, going back to my trade unionism, we have hundreds of thousands of members in the Postal Workers Union. We're not expecting one person to do it all. But if each of those 200,000 people did just one small thing, we could get a lot accomplished. And I fully believe in that concept. Again, I've just been raised in that, where we pull our resources together. I'm not asking you to foot the whole bill, but I'm asking you to contribute a little bit, and I'll bring what I have to the table, and, you know, we'll make this thing work. But I love that quote.
Great. And it's clearly one that you live by.
Yes, ma'am, I tried to.
Okay, so now, is there a person, conversation, moment, or event that has either changed the trajectory of your life or had a significant impact on your life?
You're going to make me choose. So I want to go on record saying, of course, my fiance. You know, she's just I don't even know the words to really describe her. She pushes me. Like, even referencing the union election, I was apprehensive. Again, I'm a cautious person. I was like, if I don't know I can win, I'm not going to do it. And we sat at dinner one night and she said, do it. You know, what do you have to lose? One, you're still young, but I believe in you. So my fiance, but before I met my fiance, my father, I will say that my dad is, outside of my fiance, my best friend. I talk to him every day, but his presence from the beginning of my life until now, it has changed the trajectory. Again, I have peers whose fathers weren't around. And I'm not saying if you don't have a father or a parent around, you cannot make something of yourself. But that difference, my dad, he would literally, if he saw me going in the wrong direction, he was there to yoke me up by my collar and, you know, let me give you this advice. And I'll share a funny story with you. Last night I was actually going to get some dinner, and I was at the drive-thru. And I was on the phone with my dad. You know, we were talking about just giving him updates, what's been going on in life. And he's retired now, so he has a lot of time. But I was on the phone with my dad, and he listened in on the conversation at the drive-thru. And as I'm finishing, ordering, he says, check your order before you drive off. And I was just so busy. I was hungry. I was ready to get home. I didn't check the order. Miss Sean, I get all the way back home, open the bag up, and it's nothing that I ordered in there. So I'm still on the phone with him. And he's like, what's wrong? What's wrong? And he's like, I'm like, they gave me the wrong order. And he was like, see, you got to listen to your dad. And it was just funny. He was laughing. He was like, are you back home yet? And I was like, yeah, I'm all the way back home. He was like, I thought you were still there. No, I'm all the way back home. He got a kick out of it. But yeah, it's him being there, that advice, even if it's something like that, that's always been a presence the 32 years I've been on this planet. Again, whether it's a union election or applying for the postal service, just keeping me alive, literally keeping me fed. He has changed the trajectory of my life immensely.
I love that. He's got your back. And it's funny because I have a good friend of mine who's that person that, will just say something real quick, like, well, did you? And then it's like, man, I could not listen, but I already know. But I'll tell you this, since you're only 32, I was in my 40s before I learned, oh, no, for sure, listen. Because it's hard to believe,
Yeah, I'll be talking about just life and what happens in the course of a day. And, he'll listen, but then he'll say something at the end, like, need to go back to school or something like that, like, oh, yeah, I agree with that. But I wasn't even talking about college. I was talking about, this conversation I had with this person. He's like, you need to go back to school. It'll just be things like that. And, the follow-up, another follow-up. But as he retired, what I appreciate about my father is that he's become like an activist in his retirement. In Baltimore, we have ceasefire events, ceasefire weekends and things like that. But he's gotten so plugged into the community. And, again, leaving a legacy. We have conversations now that I'm 30, he's in his 60s. These are real conversations that we don't explicitly talk about, but he is thinking about, that transition when he's no longer here. So he'll call my fiance and I, like, you need to invest in some property, or, let's help this community organization out, or let's try to get this off the ground. But, him having so much free time now, it's just great to see, my dad, and just connect to a lot of things that younger Black folks care about. He cares so much about community and kids, and just, making sure that he's leaving a world for us where, he feels comfortable leaving.
Well, after this is over, I'm going to ask you to talk to your dad and see if he'll let me interview him.
Oh, yeah, he's got all the time in the world, too. He'd love it.
Okay, good. Okay, so let's talk about a moment or event that puts a spotlight on or highlights your experience as a Black man in America, in the United States.
Again, my work, my trade unionism is always connected. So maybe 5 or 6 years ago, I had been tasked with starting this young trade unionist group in Baltimore. We have a AFL-CIO council, which is, an umbrella for a lot of different labor unions. And I was tasked with starting that. I didn't have a car at the time. So I was waiting on the bus stop to go to this event where I had set up. We had a round table with local legislators, United States senators, just different leaders in Baltimore, trying to get the interest of young trade unionists heard. So I was on my way to this event, waiting on the bus stop, and I was on a main thoroughfare in Baltimore. And police officer drives past me, and those things, I look He looks at me, he busts a U-turn, and again, I'm standing on the bus stop, and he gets out his car, and he says, "Hey, I need to see your ID." So I said, "Well, why do you need to see my ID, officer? What am I doing but standing on the bus stop?" "Oh, well, there's been a string of robberies around here, and, basically I fit the description, right?" So I gave my ID, ran my ID, nothing, nothing popped up, and he gave my ID. And this was what's interesting. This was a few months after Freddie Gray, the uprisings of Freddie Gray. So the officer, you could tell I don't know if he wanted to apologize, but he knew he was wrong. He knew he was profiling me. And the way he handed me my ID back, it was kind of like, please don't say anything. Please don't tell me. Please don't, please don't call the department on me, that type of thing. But I had a J. Crew button-up shirt on, the respectability thing. I didn't look like a suspect. I didn't look like I was running from committing a robbery. I was literally standing on a bus stop, waiting to go to this event to get the interest of young trade unionists to the table in front of legislators. And It shook me up. So when I got to the event, I couldn't really focus on the task at hand, and I didn't really share with anybody. It was more traumatic than anything, and it just was right after Freddie Gray. It was just like I didn't want to talk about this anymore, right? Even though it happened to me. But that again, this young trade unionist, this local union officer, that this officer didn't even know by looking at me, of course, because I'm young and I'm Black and I fit a description. Right, those type of things. He didn't know the folks I was going to meet with, what my mission was for that day, and that I was on my way to talk to some staff representatives for United States Senator, and I could have let them know what happened. I wasn't out here causing any havoc or any trouble, wasn't robbing anyone or committing any type of break-ins, anything like that. Again, he just rolled past me. That's probably, it's not my only experience with law enforcement, but it's one of those most defining that kind of, again, I wasn't doing anything wrong. I'm just waiting to go do some good work, which is the work that I was called upon to do that I thought was good work. I could be out here doing a number of other things, officer, right? But here I am going to fight for trade unionists, and police officers are members of unions, right? So just kind of like all these things flooding through my mind. So when I'm on the bus ride to the venue, I just was like, wow, no matter how you look, what you're out there doing, you'll always be profiled. You'll always be considered a suspect.
Yeah, it's as you're describing it, as you're talking about it, I think, and you can tell me to shut up, but I think one of the reasons that stands out so much and was so, I'm going to say, hurtful, is that it's precisely because you were now not just respectable, you were at the height of making a difference. You were about to meet with people considered important and valuable, and you were participating in an important conversation. And to be on your way to participate in something valuable and important and to still experience profiling, it is jarring. It is a jarring experience. So I do get that. I get why that would be the one that you say.
Definitely. And again, so close to the Freddie Gray uprisings, and what's interesting about that is that Freddie Gray's father was a postal worker for a time period. And I actually worked with Freddie Gray's dad, his biological father. And he knew my dad because, my dad just knows everyone. He was in the funeral service industry. So my dad just knows people. But we would talk about my relationship with my father and his relationship with Freddie. But I didn't know, at the time, this was years before Freddie, unfortunately, what happened. But all those things were playing in my mind. That whole experience, I hope I never experience anything like that again. But unfortunately, I don't think that'll be my last interaction like that with law enforcement, just because of, how they've been trained.
And I think that's something a lot of Americans don't get. But first, I just want to acknowledge, thank you for adding what you did. I'm glad I tried to summarize it my way, because that gave you the opportunity to clarify, which is that this was personal for you. You were 1 degree of separation away from Freddie Gray. This was not just a fellow, citizen in your city. So I really appreciate hearing that, and I can see, the difference that would make. The other thing is I love that you pointed out that it's about the training they receive, because I wish that in the media's coverage of this police abuse, this racial profiling, that there was more a conversation about the training. You know, how the folks, the industry that trains police officers, they make their money going from one to the other, and their whole stance is it's threat, it's threat, it's threat. And then you have the militarization of their tools. And so it creates a particular stance.
No, then this led to something else that happened to me, or I experienced or witnessed. During the beginning of the pandemic, in my apartment building, there was this young brother who I had spoken to. They had recently moved into the building, and I'm not sure his age, but maybe 18, 19. I could tell he had maybe some type of mental health issue, but I still communicated with him. He's a neighbor, and he wasn't like threatening anything like that. He liked to rap, so he just wanted me to listen to his music, so I would indulge him. We also have a police officer who lives in the building, and he's a white police officer. So we're all neighbors. So one afternoon, I'm sitting on my balcony again. We're in the beginning of the pandemic. I was just like out getting fresh air, and I heard this commotion. And the young brother, he comes outside with a machete in his hand. So the police officer that lives in the building, he had just left from like lunch break, just pulled off. So someone called the police, and he comes back. This police officer that lives in the building. Now, mind you, this young man, he's yielding this machete, and I'm watching it all play out from my balcony. But we talk about training, but also community policing, like those officers being a part of the community, because when he pulled up, two other officers pulled up, and I immediately saw them put their hand on their firearm. And I saw the officer who lives in the building say, no, I'm going to go talk to him, because the young guy he knew were neighbors. He was able to de-escalate the situation to where there were no shots fired, no incident, no one was injured. And again, like any other officer that would have pulled up, saw the young man with a weapon in his hand, who knows what would have happened. So, and I actually yelled from the balcony. I told the guy, I said, put it down, man. Like, please put it down, because I did not want to see this young brother meet his demise from some misunderstanding. Again, I thought he had a mental health issue. And again, that's how so many of these things happen. And because that officer lived in the building with us, he knew that young man a little bit more than that officer who just pulled up, right? So he knew to give him that benefit and to just talk to him. They I guess they put the young man in custody, and the officer's walking back, and I spoke to him. I said, had you not lived in this building, that could have went a different way. I said, that's the importance of community policing. And he was like, no, had you not been here and told the young man to put it down, I might not have been able to control my colleagues, right?
Wow.
So he was like, you saved that young man's life, and I definitely don't take credit for that. But just going back to how training and, those police officers being a part of those communities, that matters so much, and I witnessed that firsthand with that experience and many others.
You point to something that actually is the first time it's come up in a conversation with one of the brothers, which is the role of the community. Like, there's community policing, but then there's also the fact that this young man, like, you don't ignore him, walk past him, you're connected, related. And so then you have an understanding of who he is, and you can speak and be heard by him. There's an opportunity there that if we could create community, that too can make a difference with the policing. Because if there are a bunch of people standing around, and I know a lot of the ones we're talking about that have been caught on camera, there are people standing around saying, hey, what you doing, with their phones out. But I do think that there's still something, there's a real golden nugget in what you just said.
Thank you.
So you've mentioned a couple of interactions with law enforcement already. Is there anything else that you want to say about that? It's your choice if there's something more to say, or if not, then no worries.
I fully believe in transparency in all institutions and all walks of life, and accountability. So when it comes to law enforcement, that needs to be applied in that arena too. And even as a trade unionist, there are police unions, and we have these constant struggles within the labor movement, especially as Black trade unionists, with police and law enforcement and labor police unions, and their fight back against transparency and accountability. I think that will go a long way in addressing a lot of these issues. my thing is all of our interests should be in transparency and accountability. No matter who you are, even if I'm a police officer, I should want transparency so that whole narrative of there aren't any good cops, we can kind of push back against that. That would make sense, right? But just I would want people to know those interactions that you do have, don't let them stop you. Don't let them discourage you or deter you from what your goal, what your path is, because they're going to happen. As long as there's America, there's going to be racism, and there's going to be racism and bias, implicit or explicit within law enforcement. But having those mechanisms of transparency and accountability are how we can bring those things to the surface and really weed out the bad apples, as they say.
If the United States of America was a woman with whom you could speak, whether she is lover, friend, neighbor, stranger, what would you say to her?
Wow, I've never been asked that question before, and that's a deep question. So we could personify the United States as a woman. What would I say? Well, first, I would define what type of woman America is. And in my eyes, America is a white woman. And
Okay.
I have no animus before I go into what I mean by that. I have no animus towards white women or white people. But when I say America is a white woman, and what I would say to America, there's no need to be afraid of me. I don't want to have to approach you every time with my hands up. I don't want you to run to the other side because you think I'm trying to take something from you. Clutch your purse. I want the opportunities that you want. I want the same equity that many white women want, and within their own households, within their own walks of life. Black people, as a Black man, me crying for equity and justice is not a threatening thing. It's not an aggressive thing. Those things, those superlatives, those character traits and adjectives that we use to describe white men as being great, when they're applied to people that look like me, there has a negative connotation to it. And why I say America is a white woman to me is because of how I have to approach America. And there's some historical context to place on this. And we can go back to the birth of a nation and how, there was this narrative that Black men were trying to, just, come after white women, attack white women. And we've seen that narrative play out again and again. So again, my approach with America has always been my approach with white women. And it's a weird thing to say and think about now, but just the approach of, you do not need to fear me. Hear me out. I want the equity that you want. I want the same things that you want, and there's nothing wrong with me wanting that. And if me vocalizing that or fighting or pushing for that makes you afraid, it shouldn't. It should make you understand that those ideals that are so deeply ingrained within our nation, they permeated to my community. And now we just want a piece of the pie. I would say that to this white woman that is America, your husbands, when you send them off to work, I'm not a threat to them. There's nothing I'm doing to come for them. I just want the same things they want. America, people like me, Black people, we have died for this nation before it was even a nation. From Christmas addicts, right, to the Black soldier that lost his life recently somewhere overseas. Mm-hmm. So we fight for you. But yet sometimes we return home, or when we come to get our just due, our 40 acres and a mule, we're demonized, we're stigmatized, we are considered other than, we're considered not worthy enough. But yet we've sacrificed, we've laid down to protect you, America, to protect that whiteness, to protect that white woman that I view as America. We've laid down countless times for you to protect you. And the first time we stand up to just call for justice or anything like that, we face the face of the Emmett Tills, and that's unfortunate. It's unfortunate I have to come to a nation which I've lived in my entire life, I was born in, and come with my hands up, with my hands open to show that I'm not a threat. I don't want to steal or I want to take it. I don't want to do anything like that. I just want the same thing that every other person wants.
Yeah. Yeah, that's very clear. That's very clear. And I don't hear animus, I just hear characterization. Courtney, what is love to you?
Love to me is just this unconditional action, feeling, love to me is, in essence, feeling incomplete without the thing that you love. So in me personally, I feel incomplete without my fiance. If she's, goes on a girl's trip, or, is gone for a few days, spending time with her parents or something like that, I feel incomplete. So that love is completeness to me. On a deeper level, love is empathy. To me, love is religion. Love is God. I consider religion and God that feeling I can feel like in 2006 when I saw people standing on top of rooftops in New Orleans, and that empathy I felt, and that feeling I had to act, I had to do something. That's religion. That's God. Because that emotion that I felt like I'm connected to that person, and why can't I do anything, or I want to do something for them. So that's that connection, that completeness. That's what love is to me. It's just a feeling of being whole.
Mm. Yeah, there's a phrase. I participate in some personal development, and they talk about, every person being whole, perfect, and complete, lacking nothing. And, when I think about that and apply it to love, in that context, they mean, being complete in yourself, like you're enough, or whatever it is you're up to. But I also hear in how you describe it in the area of love, that it's almost like whenever the relationship is out, there's something that's not, it's not peace, then being willing to step into getting that complete, such that love is present.
Exactly. I mean, we have our disagreements, and we may not talk for a few hours. And even in those few hours, that's my best friend. I want to share everything that's going on with you. But, I'm like, okay, we're not speaking right now for a few minutes. But again, like that feeling that, I want to say something, I want to talk to you, and I can't. So whether that's a physical absence or just, a disagreement, that feeling is, to me, that's love too. Because again, knowing that I've flown across the country, I do different union conventions and events, and every time I'm gone, the first thing I cannot wait to do is get back. So that absence, that incomplete feeling, lets me know that love is a thing, and love is that completeness.
Yeah, I get it. So now I ask, and you've shared many things throughout this conversation, but I ask the question, what is something you've learned through your profession, training, experiences, or adventures that you believe more Black men should know?
To my brothers out there, I want you all to know that it's really not so much what you know, but who you know. And that's why that good old boys club has existed for centuries. Because, you don't have to be the most qualified or the brightest or the smartest or have the highest IQ, as we can see now with the person who's leading the country, but it's really who you know. And I actually told my nephew that this past weekend. I said, nephew, in my 32 years, I've seen folks in rooms that I didn't think they should be in. But who am I to judge, or who am I to put a qualification on? But again, I knew it's because they knew someone who either built the room, or was in the room, or at that table. So I would say to all my brothers out there, make as many connections. Networking is important. Step outside your comfort zone. You have a conversation with someone who you might not normally have a conversation with. Because once you know certain folks, and you can get into certain rooms, then you can show that you belong to be there. But usually someone who's opening the door is someone you know. So it's not what you know more so than who you know.
This podcast is about brothers, but of course I'm going to interject myself, here and there. And I have to say, what you just said, it took me back to, after I went to law school and graduated in the 90s, early 90s. And, I didn't come, my mom was a working mom, single working mom. And, I was paying for it myself, and things got a little tight. And I didn't think that, I thought I might need to take a year off to build up my finance. And I shared it with the professor, and that was right before spring break. And I wasn't someone who tended to share my business. You know what I mean? But I did. And I remember I came back from spring break. It was a week like it is for, most other schools. And she had a note in my mailbox. We had these old mailboxes on campus. And she said, it said to come see her. I did. And the long and short of the story is she had already referred me for a job on campus to be the pre-law counselor. And it paid a really nice salary. And the thing is she chose me, she selected me. It was never advertised. So no one else even knew that this position existed. And it was literally across the street from the law school. Like I literally walked across the street, had my little 20-hour job, which took care of my money. And then I became the coordinator of the pre-professional office there. And I only became that because she had gotten me in the door. Mm-hmm. And that only happened because of a conversation. And that's because I knew her. And so what you're saying right now, I mean, it's not news for most people that who you know matters. Who you know and being in conversation with them about what's up with you and what you want. It's amazing what that'll do.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And, in your instance, you did the work to put yourself there. So we never discredit ourselves for getting to a certain point. But sometimes, especially being Black, right, sometimes that ceiling is there. And the only one to bust it open is someone who you may know.
Yeah.
But, in that instance, what I'm hearing is like you put in the work. You just needed someone else to just kind of nudge that door open a little bit.
So now that we've completed the questions in the interview, having participated in this interview, is there anything that you now see or that you're more aware of than before?
More aware of the fact that there are people who want to hear from Black men. Very rarely are there platforms or opportunities unless I'm dribbling a ball, right, or having a mic in my hand where America, anyone, wants to hear what I have to say or how I feel. And even in those spaces of entertainment and things, as we've seen recently, some of America just wants ballers to just dribble, right? Dribble and shut up, as they say. So I think I'm more aware of now that there are safe spaces, because these type of podcasts and these venues and just places that come and have discussions, they're few and far between for young Black men in America. So Ms. Shine, thank you for providing this space. This was therapeutic to me in ways, I rarely share this type of stuff, but it feels like a safe space. And I really appreciate that.
Thank you so much that you have validated the podcast and my intention for the podcast. And I appreciate that. And I will also say that this conversation has just been a joy for me because you are so young and so wise and so committed. And, it just, I'm literally just beaming right now because we don't get to see. If I had not taken on doing this podcast, I wouldn't get to know that a young man like yourself exists. And by the way, I let you call me Miss Shine throughout the interview. I normally would have said, no, call me Robin, but I was like, I'm just gonna let it go.
But if my dad hears this and he hears me referring to you by your first name, he's gonna definitely call me. So
Got it. I got that. Well, I want you to know it's just been quite the privilege to get to know you, to have this conversation, and to see what a stand you are for everyone having access to opportunity. Like, you are a true activist in all the ways that make that word precious. So thank you.
Thank you for listening. As you can hear, you do not want to miss any of these brothers. Make sure you subscribe. You can find more at our website, 365brothers.com, 365brothers.com. This is Robin Shine. To listen is to love.